You know how sometimes you're just swimming in information? You want to get a real handle on something complex and fast, but not just skim the headlines.
Yeah, you want to actually understand it, get beneath the surface.
Exactly, and that's what we do here on the deep dive. We cut through the noise. Today, we're digging into a really fascinating concept, one that's key to safety and security, but maybe not always understood in its full depth.
Crime prevention through environmental design. CPTED.
That's the one, CPTED.
We're going to unpack some surprising insights about how the spaces we use every day, think office buildings, manufacturing plants, how they actually shape security, even our behavior.
It really does reshape how you think about safety. It moves way beyond just, locks and fences.
It's more foundational, almost ingenious, really.
And for you listening, especially if you're a physical security professional, this is highly relevant stuff. Our source today is a foundational text on CPTED.
And what you'll get is a solid grasp of the core ideas, where it came from, and, crucially, how you can apply it. We're moving past just target hardening, that old focus on just barriers.
Right, the locks, alarms, fences.
Exactly. This is about smarter, more integrated design. Thinking about how these ideas can genuinely change the security picture at your corporate campus, or, say, your manufacturing site.
So let's get into it. It sounds modern, CPTED, but is it really a new idea?
Well, that's what's so interesting. The core principles, they're ancient, really. Our ancestors, they just knew there was a link between how a place was built and how safe it felt.
They understood it intuitively.
Yeah, and maybe even more important, how the design made people feel responsible for their own little patch. What we'd now call informal social control.
Can you give an example?
Sure, think about old New England towns.
Yeah.
They often built houses and shops around a central square, like a hollow square.
Okay, I can picture that.
Everyone could see what was going on. Everyone knew everyone else's business. It was sort of self-policing, naturally. People looked out for each other.
But we lost that somewhere along the way.
In many ways, yes. Especially with modern urban development, particularly in the last century. Speed and cost often came first. Security, or designing for that kind of natural oversight, often took a back seat.
And the result was spaces that almost discouraged people from looking out for each other?
Sometimes, yeah. And then, in the mid-20th century, thinkers started rediscovering this connection in modern cities. People like Jane Jacobs.
Ah, the death and life of great American cities.
That's the one, 1961. She talked about how having different things happening on streets, shops, homes, people walking created eyes on the street. Natural surveillance, basically. It made streets safer.
So mixing uses was key.
It was a big part of it.
Yeah.
Then others, like Lee Rainwater, Elizabeth Wood, looked at public housing. They found that bad architectural design, or layouts that stopped people interacting, directly led to more antisocial behavior.
Because there was no community feel, no oversight.
Pretty much. And Shlomo Angel, in '68, he looked at traffic. Too few people around. Potential victims, but not enough witnesses. It's a balancing act.
Okay, so this is where it gets really practical for, say, a plant manager or a corporate security director.
Absolutely. Studies in Detroit by Ludke and Listed were really groundbreaking for site assessment. They listed specific physical features.
Like what kind of features?
Oh, everything. The condition of buildings, streets, alleys, how land was used, pedestrian traffic, visibility into buildings, landscaping, signs, where entrances were, how many there were.
Wow, that's detailed.
It really is. It showed that pretty much every physical detail matters. A well-lit path, trimmed bushes, clear sight lines to the entrance. These aren't just nice-to-haves. They're security features.
So all these ideas were starting to come together.
Exactly. They were all pointing towards this powerful concept that Oscar Newman and George Rand really defined in 1969. They called it defensible space.
Defensible space. Okay, what's the core idea there?
The core idea is that smart physical design actually encourages people, residents, employees, whoever uses the space, to extend their sense of control, to push it out from their private area, like their apartment or office, into the shared spaces.
So hallways, lobbies, parking lots.
Right. Turning those semi-public or public areas into places that feel like their territory, their responsibility. And that feeling, driven by the design, leads to more social control and less crime.
Newman had a definition for it, right?
He did. He called it a surrogate term for the range of mechanisms, real and symbolic barriers, strongly defined areas of influence, improved opportunities for surveillance that combined to bring an environment under control of its residents.
So clear boundaries, better visibility.
Yes, making it obvious how a space should be used, who belongs there. That encourages, as he put it, potent territorial attitudes and policing measures. People start to care.
You see that naturally with a single-family house, right? The classic "my home is my castle" idea. There's that built-in sense of ownership.
Precisely. You have your yard, your driveway, but think about a big apartment block, or even some sprawling office parks. Those common areas, hallways, elevators, parking garages, they can feel like nobody's responsibility.
A no man's land.
Exactly. And that's where problems can start. That loss of territoriality, that feeling that this isn't really mine to worry about.
And connecting that back to our listeners managing facilities, when that informal control fades, who picks up the slack?
Well, that's when you rely more heavily on formal controls. Security guards, cameras, police patrols. But without that foundation of informal social control, that sense of shared ownership fostered by territoriality, the formal controls are always playing catch-up. It's less effective.
Okay, so territoriality is pillar number one. What's the other key human behavior that Defensible Space taps into?
The second pillar is natural surveillance. Basically, having more eyes on the space.
Just more people around.
Well, yes, but it's more than just presence. The critical part is the willingness of those observers to actually act, to report something suspicious, maybe even intervene.
Okay, so just seeing isn't enough.
Right. And whether someone acts depends on a few things. Do they feel personally affected? Do they identify with the potential victim or the property? And crucially, do they think they can actually help without getting hurt themselves?
That makes sense. So for security managers, the goal isn't just visibility. It's creating conditions where people feel empowered or at least willing to report things.
Exactly. Physical conditions that create the highest possible levels of visibility do both things. They make it easier to see, and they can make people feel safer and more willing to act. This applies everywhere. Shop floors, office layouts, parking structures. Visibility is key.
So let's talk application. How does this translate into actual design guidelines for, say, a new corporate building or a manufacturing site?
Okay, so CPTED gives us principles. For site design, think about clustering units or departments. Create clear, private zones using walls, maybe even perceptual barriers like low fences or specific landscaping. The goal is to make strangers stand out.
So in a factory, maybe using color-coded zones or clear signage for different departments, making it obvious who belongs where.
That's exactly the kind of thinking. Then there's site interrelationships. How do connecting spaces work? Walkways, access roads, lobbies, parking areas. They should feel connected to those clusters, extending that sense of territory.
So designing pathways that guide people, making them feel like they're in a managed space, not just wandering randomly.
Precisely. It reinforces that sense of order and control. And then, of course, surveillance-specific design. Good lighting is non-negotiable. Reducing physical barriers to sightlines. Placing key areas, entrances, lobbies, loading docks, parking where they can be easily seen.
That seems absolutely critical in manufacturing for safety as much as security.
No question. But, okay, you're probably thinking, great, but I'm not building a new facility.
Right, most people are dealing with existing buildings, existing layouts.
And CPTED has answers there, too. You can make modifications, often relatively low-cost ones that still boost territoriality and natural surveillance.
Such as?
Well, the basics first. Good locks, solid doors, secure windows. But also things like dividing up large common areas, maybe creating designated outdoor break areas for specific teams, giving them a sense of ownership over that space.
Little zones of control.
Yeah. Improving pathways with better paving, lighting, maybe some seating or planters, making them feel more cared for, more intentionally designed, reducing the number of public access points, and making sure the ones that remain are properly secured and monitored.
Video surveillance.
Sure, monitored video and audio can be part of it, especially when watched by staff who feel that sense of ownership.
Now, you mentioned something earlier that sounds really important. CPTED isn't about creating a fortress, right?
That's a critical distinction. It's almost the opposite. The core idea isn't to lock everything down tight. It's that the environment needs to be opened up and used by the people who belong there.
Used? How so?
That activity, that legitimate use, is what stimulates the self-policing. People being present, feeling comfortable, engaging with the space. It's not about closing it in. It's about making it actively, positively occupied.
So for a company, fostering a culture where employees feel invested in their shared workspace security, they become the extra eyes and ears naturally.
That's the ideal outcome.
Yeah.
It's subtle, but it's a powerful shift from just thinking about barriers.
And this thinking goes beyond just individual buildings, right? C. Ray Jeffrey expanded on this.
Yes. In 1971, Jeffrey proposed a broader strategy. Physical design, plus citizen participation, plus effective police work. CPTED started being applied to whole neighborhoods, schools, transit systems.
And did it work? Are there examples?
Oh, definitely. The Manchester, New Hampshire case study is pretty compelling. They combined community policing with CPTED redesigns in public housing.
And the results?
Pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
Drug activity dropped 57%, robbery down 54%, burglary down 52%. Even police calls for service decreased by 20%. It actually won a HUD award.
Wow. That really shows the power of integrating design with community engagement.
It does. And it highlights these strategic approaches within CPTED that are so relevant for you, the security professional. Think about territorial defense strategies.
Okay.
These are aimed at property crimes. B&Es, auto theft, they involve layers. First, land use planning, avoiding problematic mixes right next to your facility. Second, building ground security, your first line of defense, access control, surveillance at the site perimeter.
Like securing the parking lot and the fence line of a plant.
Exactly. Third, building perimeter security, the second line, walls, doors, windows, intrusion detection for the building itself. And fourth, building interior security, the third line, protecting specific assets or areas inside, like data centers or R&D labs.
Those layers, that sounds very familiar. That's how security pros think. Perimeter, building shell, interior zones.
Right. CPTED provides a framework that aligns perfectly with that layered security thinking. But it emphasizes how design choices at each layer influence effectiveness, not just the hardware you install.
So looking ahead, what's the future for CPTED? Where is this heading?
Well, one thing that comes through loud and clear from evaluations is user involvement. The people who actually use the space, employees, residents they have, to be part of the design process.
Why is that so critical?
It ensures the designs are realistic, practical. And crucially, it means people are more likely to actually adopt the behaviors the design is trying to encourage. They have buy-in. Simpler, more natural approaches often work best because people understand and accept them.
Can you give some examples of those simpler, maybe future-focused strategies?
Sure. Things like clearer border definition, making it obvious where public space ends and controlled space begins, marking transitional zones clearly, relocating gathering areas, like I mentioned, putting break rooms or meeting spots in visible areas, not tucked away.
Using safe activities to watch over unsafe areas.
Exactly. Or placing potentially vulnerable activities, like maybe cash handling or sensitive deliveries, in areas that already have great natural surveillance. Redesigning space to create natural barriers. Improving scheduling so spaces are used effectively. Enhancing sight lines. It's often about smart, low-tech tweaks.
It sounds like it needs buy-in not just from users, but from the top down.
Absolutely. The future of CPTED really depends on policymakers, CEOs, architects, planners, developers, everyone involved in creating spaces, embracing these ideas. It's encouraging that we've seen moves in this direction.
Like the federal guidelines after 9/11?
Yes, incorporating CPTED into federal building design, and ACES International, including CPTED in its physical security guidelines back in 2009. It's becoming recognized as a fundamental part of good security practice.
So summing up, CPTED isn't just theory.
Not at all. It's about practical, cost-effective design based on understanding crime patterns and the environment. It's about finding innovative solutions that work with reality, things as they are, not just how we wish they were, leveraging the environment itself.
And for the physical security practitioners listening, your role is really key here. Analyzing designs, understanding crime risks, and recommending CPTED countermeasures, especially early on.
Yes, getting involved in the planning stages of new construction or major renovations is huge. You can influence the design from the ground up.
And always remembering that core distinction.
Right. It's fundamentally about the physical design and the use of space to encourage those natural, informal controls. It's not just target hardening.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. We know crime prevention and community development often go hand in hand. Good design can make a place better economically, socially, feel better to be in, and discourage crime. So how might you, in your role, use these CPTED principles? How could you transform not just the security, but the whole experience of the spaces you manage, whether it's corporate HQ or a factory floor? What small design shifts could have a really big impact on safety, maybe even collaboration and culture? Something to think